Have you ever felt the pressure to constantly prove your worth, to show the world that you're capable, strong, and deserving of respect? Society often tells us that success is measured by how much we prove ourselves to others. But today, I want to challenge that idea. Sometimes you don't have to prove yourself. Sometimes your value isn't in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. True confidence isn't about constantly seeking validation. It's about knowing your worth, even when no one is watching. In this speech, I want to remind you that you don't need to fight every battle, respond to every doubt, or seek approval from everyone. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply be. Let's dive into this together. From a young age, we are conditioned to seek approval from those around us. It starts in childhood when we look up to our parents, teachers, and friends, waiting for their nod of approval. We are praised when we perform well, scolded when we fail, and often measured by the standards set by others. As we grow, this pattern continues. Grades in school, achievements in extracurricular activities, job titles, social status, and even personal relationships all seem to depend on external validation. Society teaches us that our worth is something to be earned, that it must be proven over and over again. But the truth is, your worth isn't defined by others. It exists inherently, regardless of who acknowledges it. Many people spend their entire lives chasing validation, believing that they need someone else's recognition to feel valuable. This mindset creates an endless cycle of dependency on external opinions, making one's self-esteem fragile and conditional. The problem with this approach is that no matter how much validation you receive, it will never be enough. There will always be someone who doubts you, criticizes you, or fails to see your potential. If your self-worth is tied to their perceptions, you will find yourself constantly striving for something unattainable, a universal approval. The need for external validation is deeply rooted in human nature. From an evolutionary perspective, acceptance by the group was crucial for survival. Being part of a community ensured safety, resources, and support. This instinct still lingers today, making us crave acknowledgement and fear rejection. However, in modern society, where individuality and self-awareness play a crucial role, basing our self-worth on others' opinions is a limiting belief. The strongest and most successful individuals are those who recognize their own value without needing it to be confirmed by someone else. Imagine an artist who pours their heart into a painting. They know the meaning behind each stroke, the passion behind every color choice, and the emotions embedded in their work. Now, if a critic walks in and dismisses the painting as unimpressive, does that change the effort, thought, and creativity that went into it? Absolutely not. The painting's worth doesn't diminish just because someone fails to see its beauty. The same applies to people. Just because someone doesn't acknowledge your value doesn't mean it isn't there. When you allow others to define your worth, you give away your power. You allow their moods, biases, and limitations to dictate how you feel about yourself. One day you may be praised and you feel on top of the world. The next, someone may question your abilities and suddenly your confidence wavers. Living like this is exhausting and unsustainable. True freedom comes when you detach your self-worth from external opinions and recognize that your value is intrinsic. People who rely on external validation often find themselves trapped in a cycle of constant performance. They go above and beyond to impress, overextend themselves to be liked, and sacrifice their own well-being just to be accepted. They measure their worth by how others react to them, leading to anxiety, insecurity, and burnout. But the moment you decide that your worth isn't something that needs to be proven, you free yourself from this exhausting pursuit. You begin to make choices based on what feels right for you rather than what will earn you approval. Consider the most influential figures in history, leaders, innovators, artists, and visionaries. These individuals were often met with criticism, doubt, and resistance. Many were misunderstood, ridiculed, or even rejected by society. Yet they persisted because they understood their own worth. They didn't allow the world's judgment to define them. Instead, they stayed true to their purpose. And over time, their impact became undeniable. A common mistake people make is equating achievements with worth. They believe that if they reach a certain milestone, whether it's a job promotion, a degree, or a certain income level, they will finally feel valuable. But achievements are external. They can come and go. If your self-worth is attached to them, what happens when you fail? Does your worth suddenly disappear? Of course not. This is why it's essential to separate who you are from what you do. Your worth isn't based on your accomplishments. It's based on your character, your kindness, your resilience, and the unique qualities that make you who you are. Another important realization is that people's opinions of you are often a reflection of themselves, rather than an accurate assessment of your value. If someone belittles you, it may be because of their own insecurities. If someone fails to recognize your potential, it may be because they don't have the vision to see beyond their own limitations. Learning to differentiate between constructive feedback and baseless criticism is key to maintaining a strong sense of self-worth. One of the most liberating things you can do for yourself is to let go of the need to be liked by everyone. No matter what you do, there will always be someone who disagrees, someone who doesn't understand, and someone who simply doesn't see your value. That's okay. You don't exist to meet everyone's expectations. You exist to live your life in a way that is meaningful to you. The moment you stop trying to please everyone is the moment you start truly living. When you know your worth, you start setting healthier boundaries. You no longer tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or toxic relationships. You walk away from situations that don't serve you, not because you're arrogant, but because you respect yourself enough to know that you deserve better. You stop seeking validation in places where it was never meant to be found. Instead, you find fulfillment in your own growth, your own journey, and your own definition of success. Developing self-worth is an ongoing process. It requires self-reflection, self-compassion, and a commitment to believing in yourself even when no one else does. It means acknowledging your flaws without letting them define you, and embracing your strengths without needing them to be constantly validated. It's about understanding that you are enough, not because someone says you are, but because you are. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world that encourages constant expression, where social media, conversations, and debates thrive on who speaks the loudest, silence is sometimes seen as weakness. But in reality, silence can be one of the most powerful tools a person possesses. It is often assumed that the best way to prove yourself is to respond to every challenge, defend every criticism, and explain yourself in every situation. Yet some of the strongest people in history have understood that sometimes the best response is no response at all. When someone doubts you, the instinctive reaction is to argue, to prove them wrong, to defend your worth. This reaction, while understandable, often does more harm than good. When you engage in proving yourself constantly, you give energy to the very doubts being cast upon you. You allow others to dictate your actions by making their opinions the center of your response. But when you choose silence, you send a different message. A message of confidence, of knowing that your worth is not something that needs to be debated. Silence can say, I don't need to explain myself to you in a way that words never could. Consider moments of confrontation. When someone insults or belittles you, they expect a reaction. They expect you to get defensive, to fight back, to justify yourself. This is the fuel they are looking for. When you give them that reaction, you give them power. But when you remain silent, when you refuse to engage, you strip them of the control they are trying to exert over you. Silence disrupts the expected pattern, and in doing so, it shifts the power dynamic. The person who stays silent is often the one who appears stronger because they are unshaken by provocation. In professional settings, silence is an art. Leaders, successful entrepreneurs, and influential figures understand that not every situation requires a response. In negotiations, the ability to remain silent can be just as persuasive as speaking. Sometimes the best way to command respect is not by explaining yourself endlessly, but by letting your actions speak louder than words. When you speak less, people tend to listen more. Words carry more weight when they are not wasted on unnecessary explanations. There is a misconception that silence equals inaction, but this could not be further from the truth. Silence is not passive, it is strategic. It allows space for observation, for thought, for control over emotions. When you choose silence, you are not surrendering, you are asserting control. You are deciding not to let emotions dictate your response. You are choosing to process the situation with clarity rather than reacting impulsively. There are times when silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. Imagine someone who has been underestimated, doubted, or ridiculed. Instead of arguing, they work in silence. They build their skills, they grow, they succeed, and when they finally achieve their goals, their success speaks for itself. They never had to prove themselves through words because their actions did the talking. This kind of silent success is more impactful than any argument or explanation ever could be. There is also great wisdom in silence when dealing with people who thrive on conflict. Some individuals do not seek understanding, they seek drama. They provoke for the sake of provoking, waiting for a reaction so they can twist it to their advantage. Engaging with such people only fuels their negativity. The most effective way to deal with them is through silence. When you refuse to react, you take away their power. You deny them the satisfaction of controlling your emotions. Silence is also a sign of emotional intelligence. When emotions run high, words are often spoken in haste, leading to regret. A person who masters silence knows when to step back, when to hold their tongue, when to listen rather than respond. This ability to control one's response is not only a sign of maturity, but also a sign of inner strength. It shows that you are not controlled by the need to prove yourself, that you are secure enough in who you are to let go of the urge to defend yourself at every turn. There are moments in life when silence is the most dignified response. When faced with gossip, silence shows confidence. When faced with betrayal, silence shows self-respect. When faced with unnecessary arguments, silence shows wisdom. Responding to every little thing diminishes your power, while choosing silence in the right moments amplifies it. Silence can be a tool for self-preservation. Engaging in endless debates and justifications drains energy. Constantly explaining yourself to people who are determined not to understand you is an exhausting and fruitless pursuit. By choosing silence, you conserve your energy for what truly matters. You redirect your focus from proving yourself to improving yourself. Instead of arguing about what you are capable of, you use that energy to actually accomplish it. One of the greatest advantages of silence is that it gives you time to think. In the heat of the moment, words can be reckless, but silence allows space for reflection. It enables you to step back, analyze the situation, and respond in a way that is thoughtful rather than impulsive. Those who are quick to speak often find themselves regretting their words, while those who use silence strategically are able to navigate situations with clarity and control. Silence also strengthens relationships. In moments of tension, a well-timed silence can prevent unnecessary conflict. In conversations, listening more and speaking less fosters deeper understanding. People who are comfortable with silence tend to have a calming presence. They do not feel the need to fill every gap with words. They are secure enough to let silence exist. It takes strength to remain silent in moments where you feel pressured to speak. It takes wisdom to know when silence is the right response. And it takes confidence to resist the urge to prove yourself through words. Silence, when used intentionally, is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of power, of control, of self-assurance. People often believe that words hold the greatest power in proving their worth. They spend time explaining, justifying, and defending themselves to others, hoping that their words will convince people of their capabilities, strength, and character. But in reality, actions speak louder than words. No matter how eloquent or persuasive someone may be, their true value is revealed in what they do rather than what they say. Actions leave an undeniable mark, a lasting impression that words alone cannot achieve. When a person continuously speaks about their ambitions but never takes steps toward them, their words lose meaning. Promises, declarations, and speeches about potential are empty without action to support them. People are not remembered for what they intended to do, but for what they actually did. Words may inspire momentarily, but it is action that builds credibility. When someone takes consistent steps toward their goals, they prove their dedication without needing to explain it. The impact of their effort speaks for itself. Consider leadership. A true leader is not defined by their speeches or by how well they can articulate their vision. Instead, they are defined by their ability to take action, make decisions, and create change. People follow those whose actions align with their words. When someone says they value integrity, but their actions contradict that, their words become meaningless. When they claim to be hardworking but fail to put in the effort, their reputation suffers. But when their actions consistently reflect their principles, they earn respect and trust. Actions also reveal character in ways words cannot. A person can claim to be kind, but true kindness is shown in how they treat others, especially when there is nothing to gain. Someone may insist they are trustworthy, but trust is only built when their actions consistently prove reliability. It is easy to make statements about who we are, but it is our daily choices, our habits, and the way we conduct ourselves that truly define us. In moments of doubt, when others question your abilities or intentions, words will only go so far. Explaining yourself repeatedly may feel necessary, but the most effective way to prove your worth is through action. Instead of arguing with those who doubt you, showing them through your work, your consistency, and your results will silence any skepticism far more effectively than words ever could. Success is the most undeniable proof of capability. Throughout history, the most influential figures have been those who acted, not just spoke. Visionaries, pioneers, and change makers are remembered for what they did, not just what they said. Martin Luther King Jr. did not only speak about equality, he marched, he organized, he led by example. Scientists and inventors are not celebrated for discussing ideas, but for bringing them to life. Athletes do not gain recognition by talking about their training. They show their dedication through performance. In personal relationships, actions are the foundation of trust and love. Words of affection and promises of commitment mean little if they are not backed up by consistent actions. Someone can say they care, but if their behavior suggests otherwise, their words become hollow. Trust is built through reliability, through showing up when it matters, through proving time and time again that one's words are not empty. Actions also play a crucial role in self-perception. People often seek external validation to feel worthy, but the most genuine sense of self-worth comes from one's own actions. When a person consistently works toward their goals, they begin to see themselves as capable. When they act with integrity, they reinforce their own self-respect. Confidence is not something that comes from external praise. It is built through repeated action, through proving to oneself that they are capable, strong, and resilient. One of the greatest challenges people face is the fear of failure. This fear often leads to hesitation, causing people to talk about what they plan to do instead of actually doing it. They may spend time seeking reassurance, discussing their ideas with others, and waiting for the perfect moment. But no amount of talking can replace the power of action. Perfection is an illusion, and waiting for the right time often leads to inaction. The only way to grow, to improve, and to prove oneself is by taking action despite fear, despite uncertainty, despite the possibility of failure. Failures themselves are proof of action. A person who has never failed has likely never taken real risks. Every successful individual has faced setbacks, but what separates them from others is their willingness to keep going. Failure is not what defines a person, their response to it does. Those who continue to take action despite obstacles show resilience, determination, and true strength. There is also great value in quiet action, working hard when no one is watching, making progress without announcing it, letting success speak for itself. In a world where people feel the need to broadcast every achievement, those who focus on action rather than seeking attention stand out. Their results, their impact, and their growth become evident over time. They do not need to explain themselves because their work tells their story. People respect those who act more than those who talk. In any environment, workplaces, communities, friendships, those who consistently deliver results, who show up, who take responsibility, earn trust and admiration. Excuses and justifications hold little weight when compared to tangible effort. While words can be persuasive, they will never replace the power of proof. Taking action also creates momentum. The more a person acts, the easier it becomes to continue. Each step forward builds confidence, strengthens resilience, and reinforces the belief that action leads to results. Words, on the other hand, often create a false sense of progress. Talking about goals without working toward them can create temporary satisfaction, but it does not lead to real growth. Only action can move a person closer to their aspirations. Actions define legacy. People are not remembered for what they intended to do, but for what they actually did. The impact someone leaves behind is built through their choices, their work, and their contributions. The most meaningful changes in the world, in relationships and in personal lives, come from action, not from speeches or explanations. When faced with doubt, skepticism, or the need to prove oneself, the most effective response is not words, but action. Demonstrating capability through effort, showing character through behavior, and proving strength through resilience will always speak louder than anything that can be said. From an early age, people are conditioned to seek approval from others. It starts with parents, teachers, and peers, and as life progresses, it extends to colleagues, friends, and even strangers. Society encourages external validation as a measure of success, making people believe that their worth is determined by how much they are accepted and admired. This creates a cycle where individuals feel the need to constantly prove themselves, seeking approval at every step. However, true confidence does not come from external validation. It comes from self-acceptance. Letting go of the need for approval is one of the most liberating and powerful things a person can do. The desire for approval often stems from fear, the fear of rejection, failure, or being seen as inadequate. People shape their decisions based on what they think will make them more likable or respected, sometimes at the expense of their own desires and values. This need for approval influences careers, relationships, and even personal choices. It can cause people to follow paths that do not align with who they truly are, simply because they fear being judged for making a different choice. Over time, this can lead to frustration, resentment, and a sense of emptiness, because living for the validation of others rarely brings true fulfillment. When someone depends on approval to feel valuable, they become easily influenced by external opinions. Their happiness fluctuates based on how others perceive them. A compliment may make them feel worthy, while criticism can shake their confidence. This creates an unstable sense of self-worth, where identity is shaped by external feedback rather than internal conviction. The truth is, no matter how much approval someone receives, it will never be enough to create lasting confidence. Approval is temporary, inconsistent, and often given based on subjective opinions that have little to do with a person's true worth. Letting go of the need for approval does not mean disregarding others completely. It means shifting the focus from seeking validation to living in alignment with personal values and aspirations. When people stop trying to please everyone, they gain the freedom to make choices based on what truly matters to them. They begin to trust their instincts rather than relying on the approval of others to confirm their decisions. This shift allows them to develop an inner sense of confidence that remains steady regardless of outside opinions. One of the greatest misconceptions is that seeking approval leads to acceptance and love. In reality, trying to please everyone often results in a loss of authenticity. When people constantly adjust their actions to fit the expectations of others, they lose touch with who they truly are. This can lead to exhaustion, anxiety, and self-doubt because they are always trying to fit into a mold rather than embracing their individuality. Authenticity is far more valuable than approval because it attracts the right people. Those who appreciate and respect a person for who they truly are, not for who they pretend to be. It takes strength to stand firm in one's beliefs and choices, especially when they are met with disapproval. The reality is that no matter what someone does, there will always be people who criticize, misunderstand, or judge them. It is impossible to please everyone, and trying to do so is a losing battle. Those who base their decisions on the fear of disapproval end up sacrificing their happiness for the comfort of others. But those who are secure in themselves understand that the opinions of others do not define their worth. One of the most freeing realizations is that most people are not thinking about others as much as they assume. People are often too focused on their own lives, insecurities, and concerns to constantly judge others. Yet many hold themselves back out of fear of what others might think, not realizing that those very people are also caught up in their own thoughts and worries. Understanding this allows individuals to let go of the unnecessary pressure to seek approval and instead focus on what truly matters to them. Letting go of the need for approval also creates stronger relationships. When people stop seeking validation, they build connections based on mutual respect rather than dependency. They no longer feel the need to impress or please others at the cost of their own well-being. Instead, they establish relationships where they can be themselves without fear of judgment. This leads to deeper, more genuine connections with those who appreciate them for who they truly are. Confidence does not come from being liked by everyone. It comes from knowing that self-worth is not dependent on external validation. When someone truly believes in themselves, they no longer need constant reassurance. They trust their own decisions, pursue their own passions, and live life on their own terms. They do not waste time trying to prove themselves to those who do not see their value because they understand that their worth is not up for debate. One of the biggest obstacles to letting go of approval-seeking behavior is the discomfort of rejection. Rejection can be painful, but it is also an important part of growth. Every successful person has faced rejection at some point, whether in their career, personal life, or creative pursuits. The difference between those who thrive and those who remain stuck is that the former do not allow rejection to define them. They understand that rejection is not a reflection of their worth, but simply a part of life. By embracing rejection rather than fearing it, people develop resilience and become more confident in their abilities. When someone no longer depends on approval, they become more fearless in pursuing their goals. They are not held back by the fear of criticism or failure. They take risks, explore new opportunities, and step outside their comfort zones because they are no longer controlled by what others might think. This is where true growth happens. The greatest achievements in life come from those who dared to move forward despite disapproval, who chose to believe in themselves even when others did not. The shift from seeking approval to embracing self-acceptance is not always easy. It requires unlearning years of conditioning and challenging deep-seated fears. But with time, it becomes clear that self-worth does not come from how many people approve, praise or recognize someone. It comes from within, from the ability to stand confidently in one's own truth, regardless of external validation.